stress, lowering your stress, sleeping, you mentioned those things, are very, very important. High stress, not sleeping well, can give you diabetes, can give you
Hmm.
high blood
That's
pressure,
right.
it increases your risk of everything. All those things you mentioned, if you concentrate on resistance exercise, that might help your metabolic parameters even better
Oh yeah, no doubt.
than just aerobic. I'm not saying it's bad. All exercise is good. The best
Hmm.
exercise is the one that your patient is willing to do.
Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Isn't it curious why so many doctors suffer from the same medical conditions that their patients suffer from? And if we can't rely on doctors to heal themselves, how can we trust them to help us heal? When choosing a doctor, one important test to consider is whether they have foundational knowledge in the art of healing. Now, even though traditional medical school training is focused on disease management, it's crucial that doctors are curious enough to question this approach if it's not working and find better ways to approach the art of medicine. The way I see it is not focusing on disease management, but instead in understanding the root cause of disease and focusing on addressing that. This opens up the possibility that healing can occur for the many who desire it. Today, we will hear from a doctor who believes that food is the best medicine as he shares his own healing journey. Today's guest is Dr. Nelson Vazquez. Dr. Vazquez is a family physician with over 40 years of clinical experience and who personally was able to improve his struggles with diabetes, obesity, and many other chronic illnesses by simply reducing carbs in his diet. He has now restored his health and is now sharing his healing message with his patients, friends, family, and even has the courage to start a YouTube channel, which we will share in the podcast and video notes at The Real Dr. Nelson, which is on YouTube. With that, my friend, I thank you for coming to this episode and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I am always excited when I see a fellow colleague uh, take this journey. And many of us have landed here because we have struggled with something, and we become curious on how to fix that something. And many of us land in the low carb, keto, or carnivore space. So I really appreciate you doing that. I'm excited that you've started your new YouTube channel. When I went to the channel, I noticed that you have before and after images, and it's striking to see the transformation you've made. So I'm really happy for that transformation. And I'm just happy that you will take that knowledge and impact so many people, whether it's in your clinical practice or in your sharing your message on podcasts like this, and of course as you grow your YouTube channel. So I encourage anybody checking us out to hit a subscribe on his channel so you can help him spread this healing message. So one of the things that many people ask me is why a doctor, right? So I'm curious, when you decided to become a doctor, what was the why?
Well, uh, I don't know exactly when, but I can tell you it was very early because I know my earliest memories in life are when I was maybe 2 to 3 years old. And I am the second child of three. And so when I was born, I already had a brother. And my brother, when he was born completely normal, good health. At the age of 6 months, he had his regular visit and medications they give you at 6 months. He developed encephalitis as a result of that. Encephalitis is an inflammation of the brain. Basically, uh, before medical school, basically, I would say, well, it fried his brain a little bit, and he developed epilepsy and what at the time was called mental retardation.
Mm,
Uh, I don't know if today you would be classified as somewhere in the spectrum, autistic spectrum disorder. Uh, so all I knew when I was born and first few years of my life was sometimes my brother had grand mal seizures, and I witnessed
mm,
this. So from the youngest age I can remember, I used to tell him I was going to be a doctor to cure him. Unfortunately, he died when he was 8 from pneumonia plus
mm.
complications of the epilepsy. He, from the pneumonia, high fever, he developed what it's called status epilepticus and uh, died of respiratory failure. I don't think he ever made it to the hospital ambulance. We're talking 1965, so
Mhm.
ambulance response, I don't think was what it is today. Uh, so he died. I was 5, almost 6, 5
Okay.
years old, and 9 months maybe.
Yeah.
So very early, I was introduced to death. I had already made a decision I was going to be a doctor. So it was never in doubt in my mind. I always looked at other things, but it was never. I was never moved from doing that.
Very inspiring to know that your brother, even though you lost him, was able to inspire you to do this great work. And I wish you knew back then, I wish technology knew back then how helpful the dietary changes would be for, particularly for epilepsy. I mean, of all the diagnoses that we use keto for, epilepsy has probably got the most science to support it. So I think we are still evolving, and yet even with that knowledge, there's still many clinicians, whether they're primary care or in the neurological sciences, who still don't talk about keto as a modality to help put that seizure condition into remission.
And it's
Um,
interesting that it's probably the first treatment that was used until medications became
that's
available. Same as with diabetes, the first treatment that was used hundreds of years ago, a very low carb diet. So in 1965, medications were available. I do believe he was on, might have been dilantin as one of the first ones that was available.
yeah,
But once medications came around, the dietary treatments sort of waned, went away when it's usually very little or no side effects to change her diet.
yeah. It's we have to do better, and we welcome um, the technology. We welcome the new drugs as they are being invented, but we must always circle back and realize that the diet can, reduce the number of people who need to go to the hospital, reduce the number of episodes, reduce the amount of medicine you have to take, if at all. So I just want to put that in front of everybody. And as we remember your brother, let's talk a little bit about that other important person in your life, which is your wife. I know you'll be celebrating 40 years. So I'm a little behind you because we talked before we started about my 31 years. So you're my mentor. You're helping to pave the way for me and my wife. So you have 40 years with, I think her name is Nellie, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. And so congratulations to you and Nellie. And maybe, any lessons learned when you have that many years of success, anything that kind of stands out as some of the keys of success in the marriage?
Well, this past July was 40 years already. I was still in medical school, by the way, when we got married. And whoever's been married 30 or 40 years and they tell you they've never had a problem, they're they're lying to you.
That's right. Yeah.
uh, it's not easy, but I think from the beginning we both had a commitment to never, ever, ever consider a divorce. It's it's a way out if you needed a way out, but
Right.
sometimes it starts with the commitment that we're gonna do whatever it takes to fix if there's any problems to fix. It also takes a lot of respect. If you lose respect, uh,
Mhm.
things things will go pretty bad. Now, uh, my wife says it's been easy. It's been like 10 minutes underwater. uh,
That's funny.
so you have to have some humor as well.
That's right. Well, that is funny. So tell her she got me laughing, and you're right. The good news is you can come up for air, and ultimately your lungs get stronger with more experience, so it's easier. And that's the gift of that time. I find that, yeah, struggle will be there, but then you come on the other side of struggle and you have a better marriage. I think having we talked about before we started the importance of working on your marriage, right? So, but it's hard to work on a marriage if you think everything's perfect. You're like, we're good, but no, it's never perfect. So let's work on some things and make it better. So thank you for bringing Nelly to the conversation. Um, Many people come to this podcast because they want to, you know, understand the benefits of low carb, keto, and carnivore. But before you started your journey towards keto and carnivore, you tried other dietary patterns. So before discovering this keto carnivore diet, what dietary patterns did you try?
Well, I was also always a little bit heavier than the rest of my class, or maybe I was uh, one of the top three in some years, but always we used to call them husky, right? Uh, and my mother always struggled with weight, particularly after she became diabetic in her 30s, late 30s probably, and she got put on insulin very shortly after that. And of course, now we know, hopefully many people are finding out more and more that may not
Mhm,
be for type 2 diabetic the best option. So she was always on some sort of diet, and she was a good rule follower. She was a nurse, so she went to her doctor, and her doctor says, do this. And especially after the low fat craze came in, well, eliminate all the fats and all the salt. So since my teenage years, I've tried uh, many diets, lost weight on some of them.
mhm,
Uh, don't know if you're old enough to remember things like the Cambridge diet, which was two shakes and a sensible meal, and a lot of similar Medifast, Optifast,
mhm,
Limfast. I mean, there is some sort of shake always involved, which was an attempt to what we would call today a fasting mimicking diet.
mhm.
Uh, just, but all of them very low calorie, basically, because when you try to go low on fat, uh, you have to, number one, increase some sort of carbohydrates. unless you want to limit the protein, which is probably what we all agree is no.
No,
Uh, and you're always hungry. There's none of those diets that you can really sustain for a long time because you become hungry. And probably is the number one driver for people to give up on diets
that's
is
right.
being hungry, and it's hormonal. Is it has nothing to do with willpower. Some people that have seen me on my journey, this last one, where I am not hungry. I have gone with family to restaurants, and I happen to be fasting that day, and I sit
Mhm.
down, I get a glass of water, I can be with them, I can cook for them, and I'm okay. I'm not
Yes.
hungry, even with fasting. So, oh, you gotta have a lot of willpower. No, if I were hungry, I would need to eat
That's
because
right.
it's a powerful force. I mean, if you're hungry, eventually you're gonna fail.
Amazing, nuggets, and I think the most powerful one is what you just shared, which is hunger is one of the biggest drivers of us not being able to be successful, and who wants to be hungry? Even when I was a plant-based, diet eater, I was always grazing. I was always thinking about the next meal because those insulin spikes and glucose spikes would then result in a low blood sugar with the insulin, and then I would be hungry. But man, what a gift to be able to not be hungry because of the dietary pattern that you've chosen. What a gift to be around food, which was always a temptation, and to not really need to eat it. And you can literally just be social. You can be the entertainment for the table while they're eating because you're just not hungry. What a gift to not have to be given a destiny defined by your mom, a genetic destiny that you're going to have weight problems or you're going to have diabetes because you saw it in your family. And being a clinician, a nurse, did not provide the foundation. I see many clinicians as patients, and that training we got did not teach me and them what they needed to know not to walk around hungry. So it's really nice to know that because of your journey, you've been able to open your eyes to another way. And again, if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat, like you said. So for those who have not experienced that, I know it seems crazy to sit at a table for Thanksgiving and not be hungry, but it's a possibility. So if you've never tried these dietary patterns, low carb, keto, or carnivore, it gets easier, and it gets the easiest the further away from the carbs you go. So let's briefly share with the audience how you discovered keto in the first place. I'm assuming that you just kind of kept experimenting and ran into the right thing, but how did it happen?
Well, uh, I believe it was. Well, first of all, I was sort of exposed to this crazy way of eating when I was a teenager, because one of my cousins, who has always also had some problems with weight maintenance, she started eating in the 70s, late 70s perhaps, a lot of meat, and come to find out later that she was following the Atkins diet. In the 70s, that was a weird thing to do, right? And, even clinicians will tell, oh, you're going to kill yourself, you're going to have a heart attack. So that was one thing. I did try before and after some other dietary patterns. You mentioned being a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian for um, 1, 2 years, I don't know.
Hmm.
And it ended on a Thanksgiving when they put the turkey on the table. And
Yeah.
so that ended up there. I grew up. around vegetarians, even though there was chicken or fish or
Mm,
uh, cube steak on the table often in my house. I also ate a lot of veggie meat,
mhm,
fake meat.
mm, right.
And I don't know if you've taken the time to look at any of those labels, but nowadays they're incredible. They're not good. Let's just
No,
put it that way.
no, no.
So in the 90s, I was already a doctor. I read one of the Atkins books. I said, okay, I'm going to try this. Every time I went low carb, probably had the best success. Usually, for some reason, 40 pounds was very frequent, the result of a diet. And I can't say whether decided, okay, 40 pounds was success. Let me add some things. The things I never stuck with these things. But later in the early 2000s, uh, my son wanted to lose some weight. He didn't have a lot to lose, but he was a few pounds on the heavier side. So we did together again. He lost probably more than what he wanted or was expecting. It was also following the Atkins plan. Uh, so since about 92, I've always given the first advice I've given to my especially diabetic patients is you need to eliminate the bread, the flours, the white stuff, which is a advice that you can find in the literature for over hundreds of years,
That's right.
right?
Yep.
Uh, so grains, sugar, starches, the first place to start. Uh, I wasn't following it myself all the time, but
Mhm.
uh, it certainly was before I decided to put anyone on metformin. Let's try this,
That's right.
and I mentioned metformin because it continues to be the number one drug that probably should go on if a drug is needed. But it's very important to change what's going to change, what's going to affect the disease or the condition. The impact will probably be strongest when you do that.
It will be. And for those checking us out, we did a couple of video shorts. We touched on the vitamin in particular that becomes deficient with metformin. So check that out. And we did another video short as well. So go to YouTube and check that out. And listen, when I was a plant-based doctor, I absolutely thought I was eating health food when I would eat the veggie burgers. Now, there are some companies that make quality plant-based burgers, burger patties. However, we learned from the documentary I was privileged to participate in by Vinnie Tortorich, Beyond Impossible, that the Beyond burgers and the Impossible burgers are made of a lot of things that we should not be consuming. And I don't think the evidence was there to justify it because I think leg hemoglobin in particular, and I think that's in the Impossible Burger, which makes the meat bloody, like it's real. That leg hemoglobin was causing cancer in mice. But yet, in spite of that, they still cleared it. The FDA cleared and said, "Don't worry about human studies. We'll just give it a pass." So I don't want to. I don't want to do an experiment on my family or myself with these fake burgers. If you're going to eat a
Yeah,
plant-based burger, it should have very few ingredients and it shouldn't have all these added things. So I really appreciate um, us diving into that a little bit. I also want to dive into uh, you. So many people kind of keep transitioning. further away from the carbs. And you said something. You said, "Well, get rid of the sugar." Well, that's not essential to life because we know our protein and fat can be converted to glucose. You said the starches. Well, carbs in general are not essential to life, so we can get rid of the carbs and do just fine. The grains, I mean, we haven't even been doing. I mean, I don't know when they started using meals, but for generations, we weren't even using meals to use all those highly refined grains, so we don't need that to live. So we know that the things that we remove with the dietary pattern we've chosen helps us, but it seems like for some of us, we go from low carb, keto, and then some even go as far as carnivore. So as you have taken your journey, what kind of transition you even further down this low carb pathway to carnivore?
Well, back in December of 2022, I had hit around 305 or 310. My BMI, and it BMI might not be a perfect measure. It's just a measure, right? It's weight and height. It's just a calculation. So my BMI at some point had hit over 50.
Mm.
Uh, if you want to be picky, I'm still over 30 a little bit. But that's a 20-point reduction
Right.
in your BMI. I lost a person. Uh, so, but at that point, December 2022, I said, okay, I got to do something. So I went back to what had worked and I always knew, which was going low carb uh, and starting just controlling what I ate, fresh foods, uh, very little processed foods. Right now, I am 100% no processed foods.
Yeah.
Like, and my family's tired of hearing about it. um, but I've noticed several changes. But by the way, my wife is off completely of insulin.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
How long was she on it?
years, years.
That's
Uh, so and her
wow.
A1C had gone from 7 point something to 5.9. She's just a
Mm,
week ago she did 5.9. She was very
mhm.
very proud of herself and happy about it. And anyways, so
Wow.
I went basically I went low carb keto. Uh, I've never had the keto flu, by the way. Don't know how it feels. However, sometimes I have felt a little bit the fatigue and the tiredness, which usually adding a little bit of salt helps. Then in April of 23, I sort of tweak it a little bit more strict. And then on June 12th of 23 was when they told me about my eye problem. I
Right.
had developed macular edema after being a year and a half on GLP-1, which had not helped me with my A1C was the same before and after. Had not helped me with the weight until I decided to change my way of eating. It had given me the macular edema, had given me gastroparesis as well.
Mm.
And just 2 weeks later was my last shot. It was a weekly shot. Uh, it was not Ozempic, but it was a similar. It's from that group. Uh, I usually don't like to mention the name because it's not unique to that particular one.
Right.
It's
That's
all of
right.
them. All of
It's
them
all
can
of
cause
them.
it.
Yeah.
Uh, and in those 2 weeks, I started doing a little bit more research, and I had been peripherally aware that some people only ate meat
Mhm.
for a few years now. Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, and in those 2 weeks, I found a bunch of doctors are doing this as well.
Mhm.
Uh, so learned about, among others, Dr. Hampton and Dr. Baker, Dr. Chafee, Dr. Kiltz, and
Yep.
Dr. Ovadia, and all these doctors. So June 29, I decided this is not this past June 29th, but the previous one. So it's been now 15, 16 months. I said, I'm going to try this. And
That's right.
on my third day, I think it was, I woke up knowing I did not need to eat that day. No, I was not hungry at all. I said, oh, I'm gonna fast today, see what happens. My first
Right.
meal after that was the following day. So all of a sudden, I did a 48 hours uh, fast without a problem. And most people of different religions have tried fasting for one reason or another, right? A lot of people be trying to lose weight try to do fasting, and you know 6 hours into it, 12 hours into it, you might develop headaches and you might feel bad and
Mhm.
all these things that don't allow you to continue fasting. Nothing. So
Wow.
after that, I started uh, incorporating fasting. I had been forced into the one meal a day by the gastroparesis because I just couldn't eat.
Yeah, I
Even
couldn't
to
eat.
this day, if I have two meals in a day, which I would have to separate that for at least 8 hours,
Right.
I still
Yeah.
don't feel good because I it's still not empty
It's
completely.
still yeah, it's still healing.
But so once a day, and often I just keep a day. Don't eat. I've done up to five. I think I haven't done a 7 day fast still, but uh, and sometimes I have decided, oh, I'm going to go 3 days fasting, but on the second day I
Mhm.
get hungry maybe a little bit. Okay, I'll eat.
Right.
I'm not trying to be very dogmatic about it and force myself to do something. If I'm not ready for the 3 days and I did two, that's good too.
It's such a gift when eating becomes, "I'll get to it. I got other things to worry about right now. I got a patient in front of me. Gotta take my wife to her doctor's appointment. I gotta meet the kids," or whatever. It's just nice to know
It's
that
liberating because you don't have to be
yes,
thinking about food all the time. If I get to
it's
eat, fine. If I don't get to eat, I'll eat later at some point.
that's right.
And even when you do get some hunger signals, they're not that strong.
That's right.
You know,
And guess what? Um, I chuckled on the inside when you said your family was tired of hearing about it. Well, even when it comes to this channel and your new YouTube channel, I hope people don't come to our channel if they're tired of hearing about it, because you're gonna hear about it. And when I think about your wife getting off of insulin, after being told, I'm sure that would be a lifetime medication. I hope I hope they're not tired of hearing about that. And again, when we did the other video short, we talked about the GLP-1s, and and please go to YouTube to check that out. But just so people are clear, um, I'll mention some of the names since you didn't want to specifically call out a particular brand, because you're right, all the GLP-1s kind of work the same. They just some are more potent than others. So you have the Ozempics, everybody's aware of that, and we have the Wegovy's, which is kind of like the Ozempic diabetes. Wegovy, that's more for
weight
weight
loss.
loss, right? And then we have the Manjaro, which is more for diabetes, and then we have the Zepbound. But there's others. There's the Trulicities, things that came before these more potent drugs.
Yeah, the first
Uh,
one was by Bayetta 15 years
yes,
ago.
Byetta. That's right. Byetta was out there, and I think it was 2 shots daily, like
It
twice a
had
day, maybe. Yeah, so
yeah,
a lot of shots. And as the technology advances, we can take less shots. Uh, I think Victoza is a once a day shot. And then we have Saxenda, such a sexy name, Saxenda, which is a weight loss drug. So um, we have these drugs out there. Exanatide, I think, is another one. But I wanted to put those names in front of people because they all have the potential side effects. Now, again, we're doctors. We have a lot of things in our toolkit, and we're willing to use those things. But the first thing out of our toolkit should be diet change. So if we do that and we're unsuccessful, then great. But the goal is to not need that. Now, for fun, um, go be so the heaviest. How much weight have you lost overall?
So since my heaviest, about 115 pounds or so,
Mm-hmm.
I fluctuate. I've been for the past several months fluctuating between, like a 7 pound range. So 198. I did make it below 200, sometimes up to 205 or so. But 115 is for my heaviest. It was 320. That's the BMI is over 50 there. And when I decided to start 21 months ago or so, that was between 305 and 310. So over 100 in this particular time, but since my heaviest, 115 to 120.
Cool. Now, for those who are going to check us out on the podcast app, go to YouTube on my YouTube channel so you can see the thumbnail. We'll probably use that thumbnail to show your transformation, and I appreciate you sharing that. You shared with me that I think you mentioned the stroke. When you think about the stroke, what was that experience like, and how what's kind of helped? What's gotten better since you had the stroke and you've now started this lifestyle change?
So let me first point out what was wrong in general that I think led to the stroke. And
Mhm.
I did a review of my labs for as long as I could find, which was about, I did this past year. Uh, I had data for maybe 15 years. And my LDL, for example, LDL
Mhm.
cholesterol, uh, was a little bit high very frequently. But you know what was also high and sometimes not very slightly high? My triglycerides.
Yeah, I figured you were
And
gonna
you
say
know
that.
what else was always low? I had never been able to have an HDL close to even 40. It had been
Mm.
in the 20s
Mhm.
and usually in the 30s.
Mm.
And my blood sugar at times had been uncontrolled. I think I had either 9 or 11 of my A1C ones.
Mhm.
Uh, and but always my triglycerides, I did have one that was over 300 with my HDL has dipped down into the 20s. And when you take the Framingham Heart Study, which someone did a review of the data, they realized that LDL by itself was not the predictive
No.
number that we were thinking of. It was always accompanied by high triglycerides and
Mhm.
low HDL. By
That's right.
itself, LDL is not exactly the
Nope.
greatest predictor. And recently I went to the American Heart Association, and they do have a video now there that talks about all three, not just LDL, by the way.
Good.
That's
Oh, and
it was very interesting to me.
yeah.
There was no mention that this is the cause. They I think things, they might take 20 years to change, but I
Right,
think
right.
I feel good about the direction, I think. But
We're going in the right direction.
yeah, so I reviewing that. Then in 2018, I started having blood pressure problems, which I had never had. 18, I was 58, by the way, if you want to calculate my age. Uh, and for a few months, my blood pressure had been going high. I ended up having very high doses of medications at some point, but the day of my stroke, my blood pressure had been high. My blood sugars were not exactly in the best control. My
Mhm.
triglycerides were high. My HDL was low. And I was drinking a lot of energy drinks because I was
Mm.
constantly tired, fatigued. Okay. So that combination of things, I'm not going to say
Mhm.
one above the other, but guess what? What's the highest risk of anything? What's the
That's right.
highest associated risk for a stroke is diabetes,
Mm, mm, mm.
right? But
Yeah.
it's diabetes, it's metabolic syndrome, it's hypertension, it's obesity. I had all those. I never smoked. I was never a smoker. And inactivity, which is
Right,
very important,
right.
has a higher risk inactivity than what your LDL cholesterol will confer. Okay.
Mm,
So there's so many things we, as a medical class, we
that's
have
right.
concentrated on the bad cholesterol because they are potent medicines to lower it, and we should be concentrating on the ones that are 10 times. That's 1,000% more, 10 times a risk, like diabetes. Anyways, so I did have a stroke in 2018. Uh, and I've mentioned the blood pressure several times, so I want to mention I was on metoprolol up to 300 milligrams a day. You know that metoprolol, you usually sort of cap it at 200,
Mm,
even though the maximum dose is 400 if you read the packaging. So most people are not going to be beyond 200. I was 300 a day, and lisinopril 40 milligrams a day.
mm,
Now, I had not had much change when I was doing just low carb, even though I had lost about over 40 pounds. It was when I went all in carnivore
mhm,
that
mhm.
then my blood pressure started to come down slowly. 7.5 months later, I'm off completely. After 7.5 months, I went off completely of blood pressure medications. My last blood pressure was, I think I checked it last week, 118 over 68 or something like that. Uh,
Mm,
and that's when it runs normal. When I'm under stress or not having a good day, if I check it, might be in the higher 120s. The highest I've had, maybe 130. Uh, but usually is very good. Actually, sometimes even low if I forget to have enough salt on a day.
mhm. Right. Yeah, we have to eat salt. Who knew?
Yeah.
Right? It's crazy because um again, the world is still focused on the wrong thing. We are not um living in a zone, guys. So, a couple of things, just real quick. So, you said very clearly that everything that was off are the things that are consistent with metabolic syndrome. One thing we know about metabolic syndrome and the metrics we measure, it doesn't include the LDL cholesterol or the total cholesterol. Those are poor predictors of heart disease, as you've eloquently articulated. So we spend 20 I just looked it up. 24 The annual cost of statins 24.5 billion. I am I seeing something? It can't be that high. So we spend all of this money on the thing that does not actually have the highest predictability of disease. You mentioned triglycerides, HDL, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, and of course, you didn't mention in detail, but your belly, right? Those are your abdominal circumference. So we need to do better. And we have the Journal of the College of Cardiology saying not only does eating fat, saturated fat, not increase your risk for heart disease, but it actually reduces your risk for stroke. So the fat will then train your body. The fat in your diet will train your body to burn the triglycerides as a fuel source, which will reduce that number. And other than exercise, the keto carnivore diet is perfectly suited to reduce your risk for disease. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I do want to touch on um, you've had a stroke, and you also had a neuropathy, and I want to I just want to hear from you um, more about how it affected your life as a doctor and as a person, because when you are trying to do this work that we're doing, it's kind of hard to do it if you got pins and needles going on all over the place. So what was it like for you living with that, and how did it affect your ability to do the work that you're trying to do?
So initially and acutely, when I had the stroke, I was fortunate enough. I was working at the time with a company that allowed me to go back to work and be paid for being there doing some paperwork. I was on a contract with this company, so I wasn't a regular employee, didn't have health benefits or
Mhm.
sick days,
Yeah.
but I was fortunate enough that they said, oh, just come back to work. And I was doing paperwork for a few weeks.
Okay.
I was, uh, it wasn't a mild stroke. I have some videos of, of me at the time having to use a walker to walk, having to use my left. I'm right-handed, so having to use my left
Mhm.
hand to eat because
Mhm.
I couldn't keep my hand up. So I had weakness on the right side. Uh, Interestingly, I'll make this short because I don't even want to mention the name, but I use a machine which to this day I use uh, that emits electromagnetic frequencies, and that helped me very, very rapidly. On the first time, that was the last time I used my walker. I was able to walk a lot better immediately.
Mhm.
And what it does, it's nothing magic. It increases your circulation, and
Mhm.
uh, after that, gradually, I was able to get stronger on my right side. Uh, so from the stroke, I had, along with the weakness, some numbness and tingling on the right side. Right side had also been the one mostly affected when I had back surgery. I had damage to my S1 right root. So I always had, when my back pain increased, I always had sciatica symptoms all the way down my leg, but I also had some numbness and tingling because of that.
Mhm.
And then uh, developed more numbness and tingling. Of course, I've been diabetic for many years, so diabetic neuropathy, and then eventually after the stroke, uh, my neurologist checked my B12, and it's low. So
Mm.
I have four separate reasons for having these types of paresthesias in my legs.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
And that's it's and one thing that's so again, going back to this idea of making sure we know how the medicines affect us. So if metformin can affect your vitamin levels, B12, if the PPIs, the omeprazoles can affect your B12. So we definitely want to address that. But even just as importantly, if you have a condition, most people who have had a stroke have not been told about electromagnetic frequencies to treat your stroke and to help you recover. I learned a little bit about that in my functional medicine training. And I think the old way of thinking is that the nerves are going to struggle to get better. They're not going to recover. We now know that brain plasticity, neuroplasticity is a thing, and that your nerves can recover, and your motor function, which depend on those nerves, can recover. So I think there's hope, and that's why these conversations are important. If you're a stroke victim, or you're recently, and maybe these are things we got to ask a doctor about, and if they're not familiar with it, maybe you got to go to a functional medicine, go to somebody who can then provide a path for you to facilitate healing. So it's not just a diet, it's these other modalities. It's like a soup of things that we can do. And when you are on this journey to recovery, you just need somebody to tell you that these things exist. So I really want people to hear that, so that they'll know that there's hope. There's a way for you to do better. Now, you talked about your wife being on insulin, but were you able to reduce and get off medicines as you've taken your journey?
So when I decided to go strict in 2023, I had been using up to 300 units of insulin a day, combination between the long acting and the short acting I was using. And basically, before I had changed what I ate, I was eating frequently rice and beans. I grew up in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
There was rice and beans on the table every day, twice a
that's
day
right.
at least.
Yeah,
And all these roots, different roots, which are pure starch. Do they taste good? Yeah, and I'm a little bit of a cook, so you know, I can make a bunch of different things with that. And I'm talking about potatoes and all kinds
hmm,
of roots that we eat in the Caribbean. Uh, but I knew, because I often check my blood sugar,
right.
that I needed to have enough insulin on board so I could eat what I was going to eat.
Hmm,
So
right.
very often I ended up using 300 units a day to be able to have food that a lot of people will consider, well, it's a healthy, it's a whole healthy food, right?
Right.
Well, it might be, but it wasn't for me,
Right.
right? And if you're part of the 88 to 93% of people that are not metabolically healthy, these things probably are not going to be good for you.
That's right.
Do they taste good? Well cooked? Of course.
Of course.
Okay. And I rather you have whole food that anything that comes in a bag, a can, or box. But if you're not metabolically healthy, which is, 9 out of 10 people, probably it's not
Mm,
the healthiest thing for you, right? So I am
mm,
I am on limited amount of insulins right now. And why am I on insulin? Because my pancreas is no longer producing enough. It does
hmm.
produce a little bit. So I've gone months sometimes in this journey without using the insulin, but my fasting and just goes to 110s and 120s. It's only in the 90s when I use small amounts of insulin. So all my antibody tests are negative, by the way. So
Nice.
I haven't
Yeah,
developed an
that's great.
autoimmune type of diabetes.
That's right.
It's just after 29 years, my
That's
pancreas
right.
is
Just a
exhausted,
little
right?
tired. Right, right.
So I need to help it a little bit. But
Yeah.
I'm basically using what my body would produce.
Mhm,
As a matter of fact, less because our body produces anywhere from 20 to 40 units a day, 50 units a
mhm.
day on a normal person. Uh, and I'm using less than that. But not 300 units.
It's amazing, when you think about, uh, anybody who's, checking us out who takes insulin. Most of them are not taking 300, and imagining that there will be a day when you don't have to take it at all or you have to take that much or you can go weeks without taking it is unimaginable. So hopefully those islet cells in the pancreas are starting to wake up and recover, and they're, it'll get to a point where you don't need it all. But even if you have to use a little insulin periodically, who cares? I mean, as long as you're in a better place, you're healing, and it's really exciting. And I can't imagine not being here with my family because I was not able to say no to a potato. So when you think about your why, why you want to heal beyond yourself, what comes to mind?
Well, uh, when I started the journey, I was just sick and tired of being sick and
Mhm.
tired, right?
Right.
But then when they told me about my eyes, my daughter in law was pregnant with my first grandchild.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, wait a second. This is when I said, I got to do something strict. And at that time, the month before, my A1C was still 6.7, by the way. I had
Mhm.
lost about 40 pounds and my A1C was still 6.7. Uh, so when I said I'm cutting the carbs, I think my A1C was 5.3 within 6 months or 5 months. And it has been 5.3, 5.4, which it's the same number basically, because
Yeah,
with the margin of error of either
that's right.
one. So it has been 5.3, 5.4, and I did it about a month and a half ago. It was 5.4. So
Mhm.
I've maintained that for almost a year now.
Mhm.
Uh, I might, yeah, still taking some medication, so I cannot claim I am completely reversed.
That's right.
I put it into remission. I might cured. I don't know, but it's 5.4, and with the blessing that uh, those who use insulin always have some hypoglycemic episodes, right?
Right.
And so I had to always be struggling with that because if I use huge amounts and I overshot the amount that I needed, then I would have to compensate by eating more because
Right, right. That's right.
uh, I was getting hypoglycemic episodes, and I do wear a CGM, and I
Yes.
have my wife and my adult kids. All of them receive the number, so in case it's going, I've had, my son come in the middle of the night, Dad, your blood sugar is low.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, well,
That's nice.
it's no longer a problem.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's
And
just wonderful.
yeah, hypoglycemic episodes will increase your risks of cardiovascular events
All kinds
as
of
well.
stuff. Dementia, your mood's gonna be off. I mean, so it's a long list. So thank God your family's kind of really engaged and supporting you in a way that you don't hear often. So that's amazing. So we're kind of I'm really hating that we're getting towards the end because I'm really enjoying this conversation. One thing that's fun that I had heard, that I want you to maybe comment on is you had a chance to do the valedictorian speech for medical school. And first of all, everybody in medical school is smart. I don't know how the H you became the valedictorian. Somebody had to do it. So talk a little bit about what you shared during that speech. Any messages that you shared that were in trying to inspire your classmates?
So it's gonna be 40 years this year. I I really can't remember. I did talk
Okay,
about
it's been a minute.
I I did talk about the future, about hope, and
That's
all
right.
these things. I gotta be truthful. I can't remember.
But I got a better question for you. What would you, as we're wrapping up, what would you say to this audience who is hearing your story of healing? They're looking for hope. What final messages would you share with the audience?
Well, uh, you have to make the decision to change. If you're here, probably you're looking for healing. Usually, when we're in our 20s or 30s and we don't have many problems, we're not thinking that much about diet,
Right?
right?
Nope. Nope.
Usually, there is a reason why you start looking into changing something. Doesn't have to always be diet, but just you're not going to lose anything by giving it a try.
I know.
Uh, so if you're metabolically healthy and you're that 7 to 12% of people who are supposedly in perfect metabolic health, then keep doing what you're doing. Could you
I
improve? Yeah, I agree you could improve, but I
yeah,
don't have much of an argument to convince you to change, right?
that's right. That's right.
Because if you're doing it, what you're doing is working, then okay, keep doing what you're doing. But the other 9 out of 10 people who have some measure of metabolic health, uh, and we've talked about metabolic health, we're talking specifically your blood pressure's got to be under control without medication. Your blood sugar has to be under normal without medication, right?
Hmm.
Your waist should be under half your height. Okay. For me, I still haven't gotten there, but trust me, after losing 16 to 18 inches of my waist, it's a lot better. Okay.
Yes.
I had used up to 54, 56 size pants.
Hmm.
I'm wearing 38 pants now. Still not where I should be. But actually, you couldn't classify me anymore as metabolic syndrome because I only have two of the five now,
Right. That's
where
right.
I had I think all four, four or five of them before.
Yeah, probably all. Yeah, at least 4 or 5. Yeah.
So if you're looking for something, going low carb, going keto, going carnivore, don't feel like you have to go all the way and jump into the deep end
That's right.
with anything specific. Just give it a try
That's right.
because it it and be patient, okay?
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Because I do see people all the time commenting on Facebook, oh, I've been carnivore for 7 days and nothing is happening.
Wow. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
you know, took me 7.5 months to get off blood pressure medication.
That's right.
Uh, has taken me 21 months. I'm not exactly where I would like to be,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I am so much further down the road towards being metabolically healthy again, which is going to be the name of my podcast.
Absolutely. I love it, and I'm so excited for you that you're gonna be doing that. Is there one thing final question that from a protecting your nest perspective? Is it what's the one thing you're going to focus on over the next 12 months, whether it's nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, your thoughts, your recovering from trauma, your relationships, avoiding organisms and pollutants that can harm you, and or making sure your life experiences serve you, and or protecting your emotions? Which one thing that seems to be high on your priority list?
Oh,
that
I
that
know
works.
that's the easy answer, but all of those are important, right?
That's right.
Relationships are important. I think I value relationships a lot. Uh, it's my why I became a doctor is my why I want to be
That's right.
healthy and see my family, my grandson grow up. He just turned 1 a couple of weeks ago. Uh, I before when I graduated from medical school, by the way, I graduated in an odd class because I graduated in December. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So my residency didn't start until July. So my school, the Department of Family Medicine, hired me as basically was a teacher's aide. I had a title of instructor in a medical school for 6 months. And they allowed me to do 2 lectures. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make it short. They were both on stress and the relationship to illness. And because when I went through medical school, I didn't have that. Not even a psychiatry class, not, I mean, it just, and stress, lowering your stress, sleeping, you mentioned those things, are very, very important. High stress, not sleeping well, can give you diabetes, can give you
Mm-hmm.
high blood
That's
pressure,
right.
can it increases your risk of everything. So all those things you mentioned are important. Most of the weight loss I had was without exercise because I couldn't exercise. I've incorporated some exercise. I would like to do more. I still work and see patients. It's really fairly sedentary because you go from room to room and you talk to people while standing or sitting. No excuse though. Exercise should be increased. If you concentrate on resistance exercise, we know that might help your metabolic parameters even better
Oh yeah, no doubt.
than just aerobic. I'm not saying it's bad. All exercise is good. The best
Mm-hmm.
exercise is the one that your patient is willing to do, the patient you're willing to do, or me willing to do.
That's
So,
right. You gotta
but
gotta get
all
moving.
those things, I love your list of things and the protecting your nest and what is the other acronym?
It's the rope. I got a rope with
Rope.
the
Okay,
relationships. Yeah,
yeah,
so appreciate that. It's really the foundation of the function. It's the roots of the functional medicine tree. When I was getting my master's in nutrition, that I was able to put that together to refer to all the foundational things. What's the root cause of your illness? Well, you just don't take care of these things. So it's been a gift to learn from them. Shout out to the University of Western States where I learned it. I think Mark Hyman actually trained with them as well. So I thank you for being here, my friend. I've enjoyed our conversation. For those who are checking us out, want to hear a little bit more, check us out on YouTube on his channel at the real Dr. Nelson, right?
yeah.
And we'll get that link in the video notes. And I appreciate you, man. So let's keep doing this great work and helping as many people as we can.
Thank you for having me here.
No problem. And for those who checked us out today, we talked about something that can be a bit frustrating. Is the fact that many doctors are not fully aware of the healing potential of making simple dietary changes. But instead of getting frustrated, that's not in my nature. Let's try to look at it in a different light. It's actually really exciting to see that there are more doctors like Dr. Vazquez who are starting to recognize and are recognizing the power of dietary changes as a therapeutic tool rather through their own experience or the experiences of their patients. More and more doctors are incorporating diet into their treatment plans. So instead of being disheartened, let's celebrate the doctors who are on this journey. Let's support and encourage them. That's why I want you to check out his YouTube channel in the hopes that they can inspire others to take the same path towards a healthier and happier life. Together, we can make a difference in the way we approach health and wellness. So share this episode with anyone who you feel may benefit. I really appreciate you guys checking us out today. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. And until the next episode from the Metabolic Health Doc, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.